This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
Dave Gahan is with us, who you know from Depeche Mode, also a new album from Dave's other band with Rich Machen, Soul Savers. The new and third album is Imposter. Dave, this album has been done and ready to go since before the pandemic?
Yeah, we've been sitting on this for 2 years,
Oh,
literally.
man.
2 years now. This time, 2 years ago, we were out there in Malibu, all 9 of us, with some great people working with us. A great engineer, Eric, and Gary, assisting engineer. Got to give a shout out to Gary at Shangri-La. And all the people there, you know, all the staff there and everything, and the place itself, it was like this perfect setting to do this. And it was, like I said earlier, it's one of those situations where you just kept pinching yourself, like, when's this going to go south? Like, you know, and it just didn't. Each day we would get another song done, and it was just, the chemistry was just there between us. And then we went off to London, Rich and I, in January, with Marta Sagloni to mix the record. Then after that, I spent a little bit of time with my mum over there, came back to New York, and then all hell broke loose, and that was it. Yes. So we've had to be patient with this one, you know.
Shangri-La Studios, that's Rick Rubin's place. Was he hanging around, or was he sort of somewhere else during the recording?
He was supposed to be taking a vacation, and that's how we got to use the place. It just so happened it was the perfect timing. Rich had popped off an email to Rick, and earlier that year, 2019, and Rick was like, you know, if you want to use the place, I'm taking November out. And so we took it, and I did see Rick a couple of times, actually. I think it's hard for him to stay away from work.
Well, you know, I bring him up because at the same studio, some of those great Johnny Cash albums, including his version of Depeche Mode's "Personal Jesus," Nine Inch Nails' "Hurt," done at that same studio. And I know that you really love those versions that Rick did with Johnny.
Yeah, well, I was very, first of all, there's a great record, and yeah, there was something about going to Shangri-La that I was definitely drawn to, and I wanted to see for myself and feel what this place was really like, because I also watched some TV series thing. I don't know if it was what it was on HBO or something, and it was about some Shangri-La recordings and all these different artists that had gone there with Rick to work up a song or something.
Yeah, I saw that. That was great.
It was great. And it was coincidentally at the same time that the opportunity came up. And I was like, this is too weird. Like, I think we gotta go there.
Well, in that documentary, Robbie Robertson of the band, I mean, Dylan back in the day, like in the mid 70s, they were making like brilliant music in that place.
Yeah. Well, it was very different then. And funnily enough, Martin Lenoble, who plays bass and stand-up bass beautifully on this record, he recorded a record there in the 90s as well with Porno for Pyros, who he was in.
Oh, yeah.
And he did not have a great experience, but like,
oh, wow.
What was great about this was we sat at the kitchen table quite often chatting and telling stories. And, you know, I've known Martin for years, since back in the day when I lived in Los Angeles. Yeah. And, you know, he got to he said, it's so great I've got to make this record here, because it kind of was redemption for what this record that he had made there was, which was not such a great experience. And it has that kind of magical atmosphere there. It's got this kind of, I don't know, sitting out the back there is Dylan's old little trailer, you know, that he was recording, and you could go sit in there, and Rick's got a little studio set up in there too. So the place is really a kind of melting pot for creativity.
It's right there on the ocean too, right? I mean, not too far.
I mean, you have it was like it. Shangri-La really does say it all. You know, it's like, no wonder I thought at first, he's called the place Shangri-La. You know, it's like, how good can it really be? And, you know, it is all that. It was beautiful. I drive up the coast every day. I stayed in a little hotel in Malibu. And I'd get in my car every morning, drive up the coast about 30 minutes. And I would just be looking out the window going, it really is paradise.
Yeah.
And then drive into the studio and we'd all have coffee together and sort of have a natter in the morning and just start working. And by the end of each day, we came away with one of these performances.
We're speaking with Dave Gahan. The new album with Soul Savers is Imposter. And you mentioned this before. It is, an album you don't want to call a cover album. It's sort of like a reimagining or of these fantastic songs. Now, when it comes to people covering songs, I always think of All Along the Watchtower, Bob Dylan song, Jimi Hendrix version, nice. Completely different song. Joe Cocker with A Little Help from My Friends, Johnny Cash right up there too with these sort of seminal cover versions. The artists made them their own in a sense, and I know that you have strived to do that. So tell us about how you get into that mindset as opposed to just doing, say, a note for note exact cover version of the song.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the big questions that Rich and I, talked about, in the beginning, was that this had to be a sort of Dave Gahan and Soul Savers record. It had to feel like a Soul Savers record as well. And it was about getting a collection of songs that when we finished would be a complete set of work that would play alongside each other and would sound like they were coming from one band, one singer. And for me, the challenge really was to remove those original versions from my mind and be able to perform the songs. I put myself in this place, and I spent months actually before we went into record working with the songs in my studio in New York. And I had this idea. I set myself on a stage in front of people, in my mind, of course, this imaginary stage. And I wanted the album to play out like it was a performance from start to finish that would take you, the listener, on a journey of song. And hopefully my voice was going to carry that for you.
And this album, some of your favorite songs by other artists, like people like Bob Dylan, Elmore James, amazing, Neil Young, PJ Harvey, many more. For a music addict like yourself, I mean, how hard was it to just, whittle it down to 12 songs? Because listen, I love music, you love music, you love Exile on Main Street. I will still listen to the album all the way through. So how do you get it down to 12 songs?
Well, yeah, this easily could have been volume 1, 2, 3. It was like it, because it was hard to actually choose in the end. But the kind of, honestly, the songs kind of chose themselves in the end. The way they started to sequence, even in how we were recording, within a week or so after, when we had maybe like 6 or 7 songs, I already was starting to kind of formulate the sequencing. I'd go back to the hotel at night and, on my computer, put these different playlists together, and I started to listen back to how they felt together. It really kind of played itself out. And, for me as well, an album in its traditional form, when you're listening to it and it has 2 sides and you've actually got to get up off your ass and turn it over on the record player, that's how this record kind of needs to be heard. It's got 2 sides. It's got a start and a finish to that first side, and then that beginning of the second side, which shut me down, ending, of course, with the ultimate forgiveness song, always on my mind, and like I said, I feel like when I'm now actually in rehearsals and playing through, because we're hopefully going to get some of these performances of Imposter on a stage, I still feel that rhythm of the songs laying next to each other, and standing on a stage singing in front of people, because there's some great iconic songs in there alongside, for me also iconic songs, but by different, more contemporary artists, let's say, like, you know, PJ Harvey, like you said, or Mark Lanigan, Cat Power, Roland S. Howard. You know, you've got alongside, you know, classics by, you know, Nina Simone or Neil Young, Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, James Carr. You know, so I don't think you'll be disappointed if you went to see a show and these 12 songs were played out, you know?
Well, yeah, which leads me to the sequencing. First of all, congrats. You actually made an album, because a lot of artists are just like releasing singles like every 3 months and seeing what happens, and maybe we'll do another one. But this is an album, you know, from start to finish. And there aren't many albums where you want to like play track 1 and then go all the way through to track 12, but this is one of them. And you succeeded in making these versions of these songs your own. So it is such a great album. So congratulations on getting this done.
Thanks for saying that, Jonathan. I mean, you know, it's nice to hear that from someone, because that was the plan. You know, was let's make. I know people listen to music in a very different way these days, and I do too. You know, sometimes, but I still am that person that is, you know, an album needs to be something that you can kind of sit back and listen to and take time to do.
It's interesting with Soul Savers, because you were introduced to them because they were a warm-up band for Depeche Mode on tour, right?
That's right. And, you know, and at that time, Lanigan was singing, and which is, and it's another one of those things where it's just, you're just in the right place at the right time. Yeah, and we just got, you know, talking in the hallways of the gigs, and before the show, before Soul Savers would go on stage with Mark singing, and you know, Rich and I got chatting and talked about, you know, maybe getting to, you know, see if we could write together. And you know, and that happens a lot sometimes with bands when you're on the road together and you talk about it, you're having a few beers together or whatever, and you know, nothing quite often ever comes of it. But you know, I did get that call, you know, I guess over 10 years ago now from Rich, you know, after that tour. And I'm so grateful that we did start writing together, because, you know, it's been a quite the ride. And, you know, I don't think, you know, if you're in the right place at the right time, and that is not always the case, of course, you know, you got to take these opportunities, you know, you got to take the risk to try something a little different.
You mentioned this briefly about you're doing rehearsals right now. I did read about a show coming up in London, I think in December.
That's right.
Will there be a show in your adopted home of New York City?
We hope so. You know, we had some plans earlier this year. They had to get changed for various reasons, just the impossibility of trying to move a band of musicians around with crew and all that kind of stuff was just logistically not working. So, you know, we did have a couple of shows planned. At the moment, they've been, let's just say, postponed.
Yes.
But hopefully in the new year, you know, there'll be a chance that we, you know, might get another opportunity. But at the moment, we've definitely got some scheduled performances in London. And I think also now we've added Paris and also Berlin as well at the moment. So, you know, fingers crossed.
Yes.
You know, we'll get to do. And, you know, to be able to go on stage as well and perform this album in its entirety, and then maybe with a few surprises at the end. But, you know, it's going to be really interesting performing Imposter. Let's see how people react to that.
You're reminding me of just sort of how you sort of described this album and playing a vinyl and switching it over. I saw Steely Dan do one of those sort of like album side shows where they actually had a turntable on the side of the stage. And when they finished side one, there's somebody, a stagehand came over and flipped the vinyl over and put the needle down. And then they did the other 5 songs.
Cool. You know, that's pretty cool. Like I had this idea at the start of the show, but when the curtain was still closed, to just before, after some music or whatever, just to have a needle drop over the speakers, like over the PA system, so you could hear that crackling.
Yes.
You know, and before we came on stage or something like that, you know, like I know people would be confused, like what the hell is happening? But anybody that listens to vinyl would know that is a very beautiful, familiar sound.
Well, you put a video of the stylist dropping on the record on the big screen behind the stage.
I don't know. I did think it would be good to maybe to the right of stage have some kind of bar set up so that when some of the band were not needed in a particular song, they could just go have a drink at the side of the stage.
Hey, did you send this album to Martin and Andy?
I did. In fact, I heard back from Martin a good while ago, actually. It was about a year ago. I first sent it to him because he put out his record, a solo record called The Last Chimpanzee.
Yes.
And which I liked. And I sent him Imposter, and he came back to me with a lot of compliments. And I think, and one of his comments was that he didn't know that I was such a big fan of Dark End of the Street, The Dark End of the Street with James Carr, and was in fact one of his favorite songs too, which I did not know. That was, look, we've been like playing, you know, I've been listening to this song for probably as long as Martin has, and there was never a situation between the two of us where we were in a room together listening to that song, which to me is mind-blowing. But it was, again, one of those weird musical coincidences where it happened to be one of Martin's favorites.
Dave Gahan is with us. A new album from Soul Savers is Imposter. We hope for a New York City date at some point. Any plans for Depeche in 2022, or see what happens?
We'll see what happens. I've been messing around with a few songs and other things. This is kind of like continuously inspired me to, write, I guess, at the time when we made this record, and before when we first started talking about making it, I did not feel inspired to sort of write or anything. So it's one of the reasons why we kind of first put forward the idea to maybe do other people's songs. But recently I have felt more inspired, and I know that Martin has been sort of tinkering away in his studio too. So who knows? We'll see what happens next year.
Well, I watched the virtual video of your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction because, we were stuck in the middle of the pandemic, of course.
That was nuts, yeah.
And at first I was like, man, these guys should be on the stage in Cleveland in front of an audience of their peers. But then as you were speaking to Martin and Andy, your appreciation of how lucky you are, how, lucky it is that you met these guys and you did this, your appreciation for the fans, the band members, your management, your crew, it really came across as very sincere in that sort of viral virtual video that you had to do for the induction.
Yeah. Well, it takes a village.
And I was reminded of the concert film Spirits in the Forest you guys did. The fan stories were so great in that.
Yeah, that was, the idea, that came about, it kind of was taken a little bit from a good old friend, D.A. Pennybaker, when we did a film back, I guess 30 years ago now, called 101. And what he was most excited about when he first came to see us, D.A. Pennybaker, was this weird, relationship between the fans and the band that was cultish. And it's true, and he kind of related it to the Grateful Dead fans or something like that, and he was kind of amazed by it. So the film kind of was really became more about the fans than the band itself in some ways. And so we wanted to kind of emulate that with Anton Corbijn. He had this idea to kind of bring that to where we are now with that, and going to all these different countries and finding these, really kind of interesting, incredible people that have been listening to our music for years and years and years, and kind of like the template to their lives. It was fantastic then to have them at that last couple of concerts that we did in Berlin. There was a couple of moments in the film that Anton captured where that really came across, the absolute joy that happens with music when we're all together there in a concert together, performing or being in the audience. It is a feeling of being one, and it's something that I think came over in that film.
Dave Gahan is with us. The new album with Soul Savers is Imposter. It's fantastic. Everyone go out and get it. And
thanks,
fingers crossed for a New York City show, man. Thank you so much, Dave.
It's great talking to you, man. You take care of that.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.